All right, hey guys, we're going to go over some completing the square. However, in the last video where we talked about completing the square, all we did is how to get it into that form, right? We didn't talk about why we would want to do completing the square. So today, that's what we're going to do. Okay, so let's run through a problem first. So imagine we have x squared minus 6x plus 2 is equal to 0. What we firstly want to do is put it into the form of x plus a squared plus b is equal to 0. And then what we might be asked is to find, for example, the minimum point, or the turning point, or the stationary point, or the maximum point. It depends. And also the roots. So where does it cross the x-axis? And this will help us sketch the graph. So same as before, what we want to do is we want to open the brackets, we want to square, and then inside we take this x. Firstly, we need to make sure that the coefficient of x squared is just 1. So then we just take the x, then we do minus half of this number, which is 3. We then subtract this number squared, which is 9. So we subtract 9 plus 2 is equal to 0. So the final form is x minus 3 squared minus 7. And that's equal to 0. So a couple things. After this form, what we can do is we can find the, let's call it the turning point. Let me write it here. So the turning point, which will be, in this case, you look inside the bracket and it's minus 3. So it's going to be opposite, so it's going to be 3. For example, if it was x plus 7, then it would be minus 7. Minus 3 and whatever this is. Oops. Minus 3 and, 3 and then minus 7. And that's our turning point. And we'll talk about what that means. If I start plotting the graph maybe over here, what we end up with is this is the x, this is the y. We know that the turning point is now 3 minus 7, which is somewhere here. Now the turning point is where it kind of stops and it starts to turn the other way with the gradient 0, the stationary point, the minimum point. It could also be maximum. The reason we know it's a U shape is because the coefficient of x squared is positive. Okay? So we know it's going to have that kind of form. And then we need to know where it is across the y. So the y-intercept. The y-intercept, so let's do this. So the y-intercept is going to be when x is equal to 0. Because x is 0 here, and that's where the y-axis lies. So to do this, we take this original equation and we just make x 0. So we end up with y is equal to 0 squared minus 6 times 0 plus 2. And that's just equal to, well, 0, 0, 2. So that means we get 2 that crosses the y. So the graph is going to look something like this. But we need to find where does it cross the x. And that's where we use this completed the forms kind of form, and we do something else. What we do now is we rearrange for x. So we list out the operators, and what we want to do first is probably get this by itself. So we want to get rid of this minus 7. Minus 7, so we do the opposite. So we plus 7 on both sides. That leaves us with x minus 3 squared plus 7 minus 7 is 0 is equal to 7. Now there's this extra bit. Let's kind of add on to our collection of kind of operators. But now we have, maybe not like this. Let's add it like that. We also have something squared and then square root. Now, it's squared right now. So to get rid of the squared, we want a square root. So we square root both sides. We get x minus 3 is equal to root of 7. We haven't covered this before, but it's going to be plus or minus 7. The reason is there are two numbers that it could produce. For example, let's take something like 9. To make 9, you could either get 3 times 3, we can get minus 3 times minus 3. Gives you the same answer. That's why it's plus or minus. And then finally, to get rid of this minus 3, we add 3, and we get x is equal to plus or minus root 7 plus 3. Okay, and that's it. The two solutions are therefore going to be plus root 7 plus 3 and minus root 7 plus 3. So if I just produce a new sketch here, what we have is this is the x, this is the y. From the previous one, we know that it crosses the y at 2. So it crosses the y at 2. We know the minimum point is 3 minus 7. So 3 minus 7. And now we know it crosses at root 7 plus 3 and minus 3. So maybe somewhere here and somewhere here. So it does this. Not the best sketch, but something like this. So let's call this maybe x1, x2. This is x1, this is x2. Okay, hopefully this made sense. I think let's go through another example. This time, so let me just bring up another one. So this time I will write down the question, pause and have a go, and then we can go from there. So let's try this one. Let's have a go at x squared minus 3x plus 7 is equal to 0. So again, we want to complete the square. So what we do, I'll go a bit quicker this time. We have brackets, we have x minus 3 over 2, because it's half of 3, squared, subtract this squared plus 7 is equal to 0. That leaves us with x minus 3 over 2 squared minus 3 over 2 squared is the same as 3 squared over 2 squared plus 7 equal to 0. Then we have x minus 3 over 2 squared minus 9 over 4. Now, let's say we don't have a calculator. How can we do minus 9 over 4 plus 7? What we can do is we can change the 7 into a fraction, because 7 is the same as 7 over 1. So, x minus 3 over 2 squared minus 9 over 4 plus something over 4 is 7, is going to have to be 7 multiplied by 4, which is 28, because 28 over 4 is still 7. Okay, and that's equal to 0. We can then add these fractions. That'll leave us with positive 19 over 4. And that's kind of our form. Then we need to use this, right? So we need to kind of plot this. So we need some key bits. Let's go back to the original. So the original, we know that this number without the x is going to be the y-intercept. So we know the y-intercept, where the curve intercepts the y-axis, is going to be at 0, x is 0, 7. We then want to know, is this a u or an n? Because the x squared coefficient is positive, so this is shorthand for positive, plus positive, it means we have a u shape. And then we need to find the roots. So to find the roots, we need to solve this. Let's go through it. So let's list our operators out, but this time let's add the new one, which is something squared, or something square root. X is just a variable this time. So if we want to get rid of this, it's plus at the minute, so we want to subtract. So therefore, we're going to do x minus 3 over 2 squared, subtract that, which is 0, minus 19 over 4. Right. Now, this is a problem, because we have a root of minus. This actually doesn't work. What that means, because we can't do root of a negative number at GCSE level, that means it doesn't actually cross the axis. So if we draw this graph, what it will look like is we have x, y, it crosses at 7, it's positive, but we do know one thing, we do know the coefficient. So this was the final form. The coefficient, and just check from the previous bit, it's going to be opposite sign, so it's going to be 3 over 2, and then 19 over 4. So that's about 1.5, and then about 5. So the vertice is somewhere here. That's the minimum point. So it's going to look something like that. So it doesn't cross the x-axis, because you can't do root of a negative number. This is definitely a tougher question. Message, comment if something doesn't make sense, if you want like another question that we can go through like this. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. And yeah, till next time.